and let me tell you what's going to happen. In a moment, I'm going to put simple descriptions of different levels of a champion scale, from opposed, my congressperson is opposed as far as I can tell, or neutral, or supporter, or advocate, or leader, or eventually champion. And I'm going to have different folks read these short descriptions. And then we're going to get a volunteer who's going to walk us through where one of their members of Congress is. You'll say, well, I would say my member of Congress is opposed, and here's why. And then I'll ask, well, what have you done up to now with them? How many meetings? How many letters to the, whatever. And then I'll ask you to make suggestions on what you might do to have them move to the next level. Then I'll ask for shares or suggestions for others on the call, and then I'll come in last with my own suggestions. If the first person who volunteers, and I have no idea who's going to volunteer, volunteers with a member of Congress who's at the bottom end, opposed, then when we get our next volunteer, I'd like someone who's higher up on the scale so we don't keep doing the same level. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to ask for a volunteer to read the first description. And let me get this, sorry, there. So could I get a volunteer? I'm going to skip my story of self in the name of time. Who would volunteer? I don't know if you need to raise your hand, or you could just come off mute and say your name and your city, and read this first description of a member of Congress who might be opposed. We've really jumped right in. Do we have a volunteer? I love silence, so I guess we. Don't be shy.
I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead.
Okay,
Sam.
you'll do the first one. We're going to ask someone to do the next two, so be prepared to volunteer. Go ahead, Don.
Opposed. I think we can agree that the farthest you can get from being a champion on our issue is being opposed. A member of Congress or other elected officials who are opposed might say, I don't support that, or my constituents wouldn't support that, or what you're talking about isn't even a problem, or I agree that it's a problem, but I can't support your solution.
Okay, and so there may be people on this call who would say my member of Congress, one of them, my senator, my rep, fits this description. And when we get a volunteer, we'll find out if that's who that is. Let's move on and have someone read the next two. Could someone just come off mute, I guess? You could unmute yourself, give your name and city.
I'll do that. Peter Handler in Philadelphia.
Great. Hi, Peter. Go ahead.
Hi, Sam. Neutral or uninformed. The next level up from opposed is neutral or uninformed. Someone who is neutral might say, I need more information, or can you explain it to me more fully, or could you give me materials to read so I can make a more informed decision?
Yeah, and you might have a member of Congress who gives you the impression that, boy, they're getting close to co-sponsoring the bill or whatever, but they never do. And they're somewhere, and they're favorable, but they're not a supporter yet. Let's go to the next one, Peter. If you will just do the top paragraph there.
Okay, supporter. The next level up from neutral is supporter. A supporter might say, I'll co-sponsor that, or I think that is a good solution and I can get behind it.
Yeah, good. And, you know, a lot of times I'll hear a volunteer say, well, you know, my member of Congress, forget it. There's no hope with us. What's the point of meeting with them? And then they'll also say, oh, my member of Congress does whatever we want. There's no need to meet with them. And there's a kind of, we're done, either because it's so hard or it's so easy. But no, we're not done. Let's get another volunteer. Thank you, Peter, to read the next level up from supporter. Who will unmute yourself and introduce yourself, name and city?
Hi, Sam. This is Chris in Richmond, Virginia.
Hi there, go ahead, advocate.
Advocate, the next level up from supporter is advocate. An advocate might say, now that I'm a co-sponsor, I think it is important to build support for this. Or, I'm going to talk with others in Congress about supporting it. Or, could you help me draft an op-ed for our paper so we can educate my constituents?
Yeah, who on this call has members of Congress who are co-sponsoring, let's say, the bill, but they don't go much beyond that to advocating for it? Thank you, Chris. And let's get someone else. Just unmute yourself, give your name and city.
Hello, Dan Walk from outside of Philadelphia.
Great, go ahead.
So, Sam, you asked about my member of Congress who...
Well, for right now, if you would just read leader and spokesperson.
Leader and spokesperson, okay.
Yes.
The next level up from advocate is a leader and spokesperson. A leader and spokesperson might be the lead sponsor in a bill or the initiator of a sign-on letter or a caucus on our issue.
Okay, great. And so they're taking not just advocating for something, but they're taking a leadership role. You could say Congressman Deutsch of South Florida might be in this leader role kind of thing. Would you just finish up and do the champion, which goes on to the next slide?
Final level is a champion. I don't like it when groups cheapen the term champion and call it anyone who does anything good a champion. A champion is someone who is so passionate that they are out in front of CCL and pushing CCL to catch up. They might say, I've arranged for 5 of my Democratic colleagues and 5 of my Republican colleagues to host town hall meetings on the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And I need your help finding speakers for some of those 10 cities.
Yes, thank you so much. You know, again, I don't like it when we cheapen anybody who does a good thing as a champion. No, they're a supporter, or they might be an advocate, and it's not static. My member of Congress is an advocate. No, sometimes they're advocating, sometimes they rest back down at a supporter. But a champion is someone. I guess my question is, if Mark Reynolds were elected to Congress, maybe that would be, he would operate in Congress and beyond as a champion. If you were elected to Congress, you might operate as champion in Congress and beyond. So that's the descriptions. Now, here's what we're going to do. We may have time for 2 totally. And if we're lucky, we may have time for 3 people to volunteer. Tell us which member of Congress we're going to work with. You're going to let us know, their name and what city you're in. And I would say my member of Congress is here, wherever that is. And why do you say that? What is it that they've said or done that calls them a supporter or an opposed or whatever it is in your mind? And then I'm going to ask, well, what have you done with them already? What kinds of actions have you already taken with them? So we get a sense of they're here and you've done this with them already. Then we're going to ask, well, what might you do next to move them to the next level? Then we'll take other suggestions. Others on the call will volunteer to make some suggestions, and then I'll come in last. So I'm looking for a volunteer. It doesn't matter where that your members opposed or supporter or whatever you say. We'll take whatever we get. And if you say opposed, my next volunteer, I hope, won't be another opposed. So do we want to just go to Jan? Do you want to be our first volunteer? Jan,
Sure.
Can you tell us where you are?
I'm in Tennessee. I'm in East Tennessee.
Okay, great. And do you want to work with your representative or one of your senators?
My
Like-
representative.
Okay, great. What is the name of your representative?
I'd prefer not to say because some of the information I'll disclose is a little confidential, I think, if that's okay. But
Well,
I can tell you
here's the
that
thing.
he's
I
a
might-
Republican.
Okay, trying to think. I don't. If there's too much, you're not wanting to say, which is fine. I might want another volunteer. I don't know if the name is the only thing like to not?
The name is the only thing I don't want to say.
Okay, great. So where would you say your member of Congress who's unnamed and a Republican is on the champion scale?
He's the second from the bottom.
Okay, neutral or uninformed or somewhere above opposed but not a supporter. Why do you say that? What is it that he or she has said? What is it that they've done or not done that makes you say that's where they are?
Well, he has moved a lot. We met with him many, many times, 5 or 6, and he's moved a lot.
Tell us about the first time or second time that means he moved from there?
Yes, first time we met with him, he said, yes, I believe in climate change. The seasons change every year.
And that's it. Okay.
And then he talked about composting. Could solve the whole problem of climate change.
Okay.
Then he moved to planting trees.
Okay.
And now, then in November of 19, he said that he really liked the bill. He thought market solutions were the way to go, and he only wanted to look at the tax implications and how the taxes would go. But other than that, he was fully supportive.
And when was that about? How long ago?
That was November of 19.
Oh, 2019.
Yes.
Okay,
and
great.
We met with him twice since then.
And any new news about what he said that keeps him neutral, or at least not decided to be a supporter, but not as opposed as at first?
He's one of the 147 people that didn't certify the election of Biden.
Right. Okay, great. So now my question is, what is it that you all have done? I think I remember you said we've met 6 or 7 times with him. What other kinds of things, like have you brought certain community leaders into any meetings, or letters to the editor published that mention his name, hopefully in a positive light? What other kinds of things have you done that he would experience as acknowledging that you're present in the congressional district?
In 2019, had him meet along with another representative with experts from Oak Ridge National Lab around climate change, and these experts answered his questions. And then we had him speak at a conference, the Southeast Appalachian Conference. He was one of the lead speakers on a panel. And then after...
and so were you proud of him when he spoke on that panel?
Yes, this was all in 2020.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I said 2019, it was 2020.
And it was CCL Regional Conference?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
And then I think I got my years mixed up anyway. Yeah, and then since the election, we had an op-ed about the business community supporting climate-led, carbon fee and dividend. I wrote an op-ed with 3 major groups that were supporting it, and his publicist allowed me to put his name on that, and that's published in a local newspaper.
So
an op-ed.
His name is in it, or he was one of the signers of the op-ed?
No, he's in it. I mentioned him and his support for business action on climate change.
Okay, great. And so let me ask this question. A ballpark, how many letters to the editor have been published in the area in the last year or two? I'm not sure that'll be an exact number, but
about him, maybe not that many, 3 or 4.
Okay, are you saying there have been other letters to the editor that don't mention him or aren't directed to him? Okay, because something that I'm going to keep raising is the whole notion of looking on my representative or senator's website at their list of news releases, things that they're involved in or they did that they're proud of, that they put a news release out, sponsored this bill, did this community service thing, whatever it is, to look for things that you embrace, that you really like, so that my letter to the editor, or yours, could say, thank you to Congresswoman so-and-so. Her leadership on X is really important, and we hope that she can bring the same kind of leadership to the issue of climate change. so that the reference is by name, but it's positive. It's acknowledging leadership in one area and hoping that leadership could be brought to another area. So let me just stop for a moment. And the question, it's going to be of you, which is, what would you do next to get them over the hump and up to supporter? And then we're going to ask others to make some recommendations. Now, there are other things you've done that I haven't asked or you haven't told us yet, but what would you say to the question, what would we do next? You're maybe already doing it. You did it last week. You're planning it in March, whatever. Talk to us about a next step to move this. I see climate change. It's called fall. You moved him from, it's called winter, summer, to some kind of neutral and speaking at a CCL Regional Conference. But now you want to go to the next level. What would you recommend to you guys?
Well, I want to build on what CCL says. Relationships extremely important, and that's relationships with everybody. I've developed an excellent relationship with his scheduler, which is really important. Because she said that so many people, again, like you were saying, have beat up the Republican members of Congress lately. She was so glad that I called, and she knew who I was. And she said, of course I'll schedule. And she worked around his schedule and found a time where we'd have a face-to-face. And then
recently, or it's coming?
That was just a few days ago.
Okay, great.
And then we've also got a grass tops person to come to this meeting. We haven't been able to do that. He's an economist that studies carbon pricing.
And when you talked about the op-ed that I think 3 signed and mentioned him, was that in the sort of the largest paper in the district?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Knoxville sitting up.
So go back it once more. What would you say is a next thing we could do to have our neutral congressperson who's moved to supporter? Let's call it co-sponsor the bill, which is maybe be the Republican lead sponsor or just a Republican on the bill. What are some kind of, I use the word trim tab, I can explain later, but what would you do next?
The only thing I thought of is to have the people, attend the meeting and then have this grass tops economist who is one who, is a supporter of carbon pricing and from our local university to speak, and also a leader in our community. So that's the only thing I've thought of, and I'm hoping that others will have other ideas.
Okay, and I'm just curious, is it the largest university in the congressional district, or?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's have some other suggestions. What else might they do? They have a meeting coming up. They're going to get this top economist from the largest university in the congressional district, perhaps, to come along with them to speak at the meeting, because one of the issues he had or has is about the tax implications. I'm going to open it up now. Just, John, should we just unmute ourselves and give our name and city unless it's chaos, or do you want hand raising?
Yeah, folks can unmute themselves if you like.
Okay, great. Just unmute yourself, give your name and city. If we hear 2 people at once, I'll try and sort it out. What is it that Jan, let me ask this question. On average, how many members are in your chapter in an active way? I know that might go up and down a little, but you have about how many that let's call it, you can count on?
So in our chapter, we have 265 people who are members,
in the
but
list.
we only have 6 to 7 people who actually attend the meetings, and only a few new members have joined, are willing to talk to our representative. Most of our older members are not willing to talk to him
because
of his position with the election.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I do a different talk in which I say, I hear that completely. I do a talk in which I say the decision that I have to make is whether I want to be right about my congressman being awful or whatever, or if my commitment is to being right about that, or causing a transformation.
Right.
And so nobody doesn't want to meet with them because they're nervous about meeting with a member of Congress. It's that other issue. Okay, so was Daniel first? And Daniel, could you give your name and city and just go ahead with your suggestion?
Sure. Dan Walk from Penn Valley, Pennsylvania. It sounds like he is actually almost a supporter, but from what I hear you saying, Jan, the fact that he was one of the senators who opposed certification of the election has eroded some of his standing in terms of support. And I would encourage you to do what Katharine Hayhoe suggests, which is to connect the values that led him to not support the election, just explore where those values intersect with his support for climate change action, so that you all can understand where he's coming from and he can continue to feel safe moving along the champion scale.
And Daniel, can I ask this question? It might be what you said, connecting what Katharine Hayhoe was saying in an earlier session, that it doesn't need to be linked to his stand on the election, just his values for getting that election piece of it. But there are things he obviously values, and being more intentional about being clear about the things he values and connecting more to how climate affects things he cares about. Does that make sense?
That's what I was trying to say. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Catherine, maybe would you introduce yourself, name and city? What are your suggestions?
I'm Catherine Climo from Roanoke, Virginia. I had a hard time getting to this session. I had a really hard time, which is why I missed half of it. But the session I was just on was about Congress and about politics. I can't remember the man's name. I think it was Daniel something, but
yes, Danny.
Yeah, that's it. Anyway, he said to keep in mind that it's no fun to be a Republican right now, and that everybody's yelling at them. Mm-hmm. And if you can stand to be in the room with this person and put on a very nice face, be very polite and calm, this may be the time to make him listen. I mean, this may be the only time.
I agree. I mean, he would not have let me publish that op-ed earlier, and it was because of this juncture here.
The juncture and your relationship that built over time. Okay,
well,
great.
And because he's in so much trouble with his constituents.
Okay, great. So, Catherine, do you have a suggestion about a specific tactic or action that they might take? It's fine if you're not going to raise one, but let us know if you have did you try this kind of thing?
Oh, I haven't tried any of this. I just learned about it today, but if I were doing it, I would say, once again, for instance, our representative is Ben Klein. I mean, he is a big challenge. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
And I do know that he's really into the COVID thing and trying to help people, trying to help his constituents. So somehow, relate it maybe to, well, why are you trying to do so much to help them with the COVID thing? Oh, because you care about them. Oh, and then kind of ease on into part of caring about them is to care about the climate.
Okay, great. So, Catherine, you and previously Daniel were making kind of, shaping of the conversation suggestions. And so that's great. And Catherine, thank you. We're going to move on. Tony and Ray, we're going to leave it with Tony and Ray. Is there anything outside of the shaping the conversation that you might suggest that Jan and the team try? Tony, where are you?
I'm in Lancaster, PA.
Okay.
One thing that just came to me just now. I have a lot of problems with our representative who also voted to throw out our votes. One thing that just came to me now is that if these representatives who did that are trying to find some way back to the truth, some way back to, harnessing the power of truth, they could be, I don't know, confronted is the wrong word, but they could be guided towards a truth that's been present for 30 or more years, which is the science of climate, and be encouraged to step up for that truth.
Okay, good, very good. Thank you, Tony. Let's go to Ray, and then I'm going to make some suggestions, and we're going to get a new volunteer who's going to tell us where your member of Congress is, whether they're opposed or supporter, and you want to move them beyond. But Ray, go ahead. And where are you?
I'm in Pittsburgh.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Hey, Jen. One of the things you might want to consider is taking an endorser with you. And because there's a limited amount of time and energy, it's important to have any endorser who might be willing to join you in the meeting be someone who is strategically a trusted voice and someone of influence with your member of Congress. So there's a couple of sources you can look to. One of them is the donors. So you can go to opensecrets.com and find who in your area is strategically someone who would influence your member of Congress because of their donations. The other way is to look at what the member of Congress cares about the most. So what committee are they on, and what subcommittees and caucuses are they on? Because you can use that to identify strategic endorsers. And then if you get those endorsers to join you in the meeting, you can have a really exciting and positive meeting. And most of it can be them talking. And then you can follow that up with, maybe another op-ed, and then get the endorser to go with you on the op-ed.
Brilliant, brilliant. So thank you, Ray. And I was going to raise that, Jen. So this whole idea of you brought a top scientist, and your plan is to bring a top scientist, economist, I believe it is.
He's an endorser.
Yeah. The question is, that's great, fantastic. The question that Ray was raising was, but who are the people who have his ear the most? And so, of course, again, is it his top funders? Yes. Is it where he goes to church, perhaps? Yes. And so have you done some of that power mapping? Tell us very briefly what you learned when you did, who are the influencers and people he trusts the most? What kind of people emerged?
Well, we have sent him the Presbyterian letter of endorsement, and he is Presbyterian. And we sent him that last time. And Pilot Oil is one of his sponsors. And so this information about API supporting, having this statement, I'll get that. That's an excellent idea to get that and show that the API, I probably can't get somebody from Pilot Oil to come and talk to him about it, but I could at least say that API has this new position.
Okay, great.
That's really good information. Everybody has been very helpful.
Yeah, very good. And so this whole notion of finding opensecrets.org, your top donors, and as you did, is there a potential speaking engagement at the church that he attends, and and the adult education portion or something? And just, is there a way to look at the things that he's had news releases out that you support, that you could acknowledge him publicly for his leadership on X, and hope that he brings that same kind of leadership to this issue of climate change? And looking for those kinds of places around the district. Jen, this is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's have another volunteer. And I think we've got maximum 15 minutes if we go a little over. Who wants to volunteer? We're looking for not neutral, but either opposed or supporter, and moving them beyond. Who'd like to volunteer to walk us through where your member of Congress is? We weren't that hard on Jan, were we?
Jean is raising her hand.
Oh, Jean, I know. Okay, I didn't see. Jean, you want to unmute yourself and give your name and city?
Okay, Louisville, Kentucky, Jean Christensen. I would like to talk about the Congressman, John Yarmouth, who's a Democrat, who is a co-signer, but we've not been able to move him to at least acknowledge the fact that he is being helpful. I was told by his aide that he has been trying to work across the aisle, but has not been able to be successful. So I don't know whether we have any room to press him any further. We've mentioned it over and over again, but.
Let me ask a few questions.
Sure.
About how many are both active and countable in your chapter, and maybe how large is your list, but how many are the real worker bees?
Well, the list is enormous compared to the amount of response we get. We have about 7 people who come to the meetings.
7 come to the meetings, but is the list like 300 or something? Or
yeah, 275 or something.
Okay, great.
Like that.
And how many times have you met with Congressman Yarmouth himself in the last year or two?
Each of the meetings we've had have been face-to-face. He usually meets with us. He's very gracious. I must tell you that he is the chairman of the budget committee, the House Budget Committee. Takes that very seriously. In fact, he had Catherine Hayhoe in June of 2020, I think it was. It was just after, it was the first year we had the bill in the June session. And I didn't think he treated her irrespectively at all, without respect. He was very respectful.
Okay, great. About how many letters to the editor, with or without his name in it, are published in the last 12 months or the last 2 years, either?
Oh, very few, 1 or 2. Okay,
great. Anything with regard to endorsers locally?
Well, he doesn't take fossil fuel money. He's very proud of his negative rating with the NRA. He's very supportive of all social justice initiatives.
So let me ask a question. Would you, how do I want to say this? Would you say that is writing letters, sorry, let me ask it. So are you saying he's a supporter, he might inch up to advocate for a moment, but he's mostly a supporter and he's not so much advocating for the bill, he's just co-sponsors it?
Right.
Okay,
I think one of the things is that I don't think it was our advocacy that got him to sign the bill. I snooped around as much as I could, and somebody told me that they thought that Ted Deutsch had worked on him very hard.
Oh, okay. Okay, that might be so. So my question is, have you ever asked him if he would sign an op-ed that you would work to place in the local paper, communicating the importance of action on climate change and why this particular measure is important? Have you ever asked him to do something like that?
No, but it sounds like a very good idea.
Okay, great. So the whole notion of asking if he might write a letter to the editor, or more specifically, a larger op-ed, do you all feel like you could work on getting it published or because it's written by the congressman, you guys may draft it, but because it's signed by the congressman, it wouldn't be a hollow invitation that you probably could help get it published in the local paper?
I think so. We have a sympathetic editor for these things, and I understand he's leaving. I don't know who's replacing him. So unfortunately, we didn't get it, but I hadn't thought of this idea. Thank you very much. I think it's a great idea.
The whole idea is giving him opportunities to not only co-sponsor, be a supporter, but to advocate.
Right.
And so one way is to speak up in the community in an op-ed. Another, it would be, and I'm kind of doing this right now, so I would normally have asked you more and ask others, but in the name of time, the whole notion of getting other environmental groups locally who support the bill to kind of co-sponsor or co-convene a town hall meeting or a briefing with the congressman, talking to community members about his support, giving him opportunities to express publicly. In one form, it's in the newspaper. In another, it's at a town hall or a briefing to constituents, and maybe not put on by CCL only, but CCL and a couple of other local groups that would be on board. Has that ever been a request you've made of him, kind of going public with his support, in a way advocating publicly for what he's doing and others to support it and come on board?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you know, the whole notion of, you said he's chair of the budget committee.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah.
And so the thing is there a Republican on the budget committee that he's closest to? That
he says that there are some persons in the Republican Party with whom he has worked across the aisle. Very funny. The last time we talked with him, we asked him about working with the other possible representatives, the other 5 representatives in Kentucky. And he said, well, it was kind of difficult now at this point, quite difficult. And he didn't really understand why one of them, how any one of them could believe what they signed. So, because he knows them from flying back and forth on the airplane, and he knows them, and he knows what they value, but he's just.
And you've come up with another idea, and that is the idea of not just an op-ed signed by him that maybe you guys draft the first draft of, but an op-ed signed by him and either a Republican in Kentucky or signed by him and a Republican, let's say the ranking minority on the budget committee, or in some other state where it's published in his paper and also in that other state. Better it'd be a Republican in his state, but if it could be Republican elsewhere that has a relationship with, that's a step further in terms of all of this. So let's leave it right there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate your volunteering. John, we could either take a quick question or two, or we could end on time. I'm not going to take another person. John or Don, what do you recommend that we take a couple of quick questions? And they don't have to be specific to Louisville.
Sorry, I missed this from you, Brian.
George, are you asking? George, are you asking a question?
Yes, Sam, I think we can go until 5 after. That's cool.
Okay, great. Who would like to ask a question? I don't know if there's a hand raised, or just give your name and city. Just something. Go ahead.
Tovia.
And Tovia, where are you?
I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Great.
Okay. Question. And the question is that we have Pat Toomey, who kind of stuck his neck out as far as the election, and now he's being censured and all kinds of stuff by God knows how much of that party or whatever. And when he stuck his neck out, I'm on a monthly, I'm going to be embarrassed, but I'm on a monthly call the 22nd of every month. So when he came out standing up against what happened in the Capitol, really stuck his neck out, I immediately was full of praise and how his courage, and, you know, that was really easy to do. And then right after Biden's, in his first few days, he came out with a thing about the XL pipeline. And Toomey's knee-jerk reaction, I'm going to sound awful, but it was just, it's costing us jobs. It was all the stuff that was just wrong and untrue, but it was the conservative, whatever, the party line ideas. And I unfortunately told him I was disappointed in him after what he had been already showing, you know, and I know that doesn't help CCL. So I want to make my next call, do something good, and bring it around.
Okay, great. I'm going to say some general things about working with senators, and we'll end it here. And it might or might not be very specific to Toomey. I was on with the CCL group in Iowa, and they had a meeting with one of their senators, and the people in the meeting was the top climate scientists at Iowa State University, the top climate scientists at University of Iowa, the bishop of the church the senator was a member of, and the president of the like wheat growers association, but it wasn't wheat, for the state. And so they'd really identified high-level people to meet with their senator, people who would have an open ear to it. And so I urge people to think about who are those folks in your state, the enrollment of which not just sign the endorsement, goodbye, but and accompany us to a meeting with our senator. So that's one thing. The other is this, and we'll stop here. I was talking with John before this call, and he said there were 18 chapters in Pennsylvania. And I want to just recommend this for all states. The whole notion of there's this one liaison for Toomey, or there's one liaison for Casey, but there would be conference calls with the lead liaison and the 17 other chapters, that whether it's the liaison for Toomey and 17 other chapters. Now, everybody can't talk unless it's to say, I'm Sam from Pittsburgh, I'm Sally from Altoona, I'm Bob from Philadelphia, in a very quick introductory way, but so that the key aide begins to get the breadth of the reach of CCL in your state. And of course, maybe one key volunteer would share why this matters to them, and et cetera, but that our senators have a richer experience of who we are across the state, and then a depthful one too. Why don't we leave it there and not go even further over? I've been thrilled to be with you all. Thank you for the time we've had together, and I look forward to being together again sometime soon. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sam. I really love this discussion. I love the brainstorming here, and I would love to do more of that across our region. So thanks everyone for your ideas, and thank you, Sam.